Buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. I too would like to thank the organizers of this event for allowing me to come to talk a little bit about how religious freedom has developed in Peru and how this is being strengthened, and it is related to social development as well that goes on in our country. I'll begin by explaining a little bit about this historical development of religious freedom in Peru. And the constitutional background they have is from 1812 to 1915, when the constitutional text said that the Catholic religion was the official religion. And professing the Roman Catholic religion, and this was one of the main issues until 1915, it did not allow the public practice of any other religion. Beginning in 1915 was when the Constitution back then allowed, in the last phrase, where public practice of any other religion was prohibited. And so there are more developments in 1933 when respect for the feelings of the national majority was respected, but that religions enjoy freedom of exercise, and they're different. So in other words, in 1915 was the first break-off from the prohibition against practicing any other religion, and then in 1933, the Constitution recognized the freedom of worship in a public manner. However, it was not until 1979 when the Constitution had a further development of that religious freedom. First of all, it says that all people, all citizens, are equal before the law without any type of discrimination for religious reasons, and the freedom of conscience and freedom of religion are also recognized publicly or in private. There's no persecution based on ideas or religions, and likewise, the Constitution also allows for the free exercise of religion in public or collectively. But Article 86 also says that the state recognizes the Catholic Church as an important element in the development of the moral development of the country, and that's because most Latin American countries have an influence from the Spanish monarchy, and obviously that was what initiated this development in the country. And this is also present in the current Constitution. It was just modified in terms of the numbers of the articles. Now, currently, and everything that I just mentioned, not only is this something that came out of the Peruvians' own free will, but it also comes with recognition of international treaties that Peru is a signatory to. And that is where, well, it establishes a division between the state and religion, but where they work together. And this international legal framework begins with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to which Peru became a signatory in 1959, and which says that this right to the freedom of religion also includes the ability to change religion, to freedom of belief, whether in public or in private, and to be able to exercise one's own religion. Then we have the International Pact of Civil Rights, to which Peru signed, which says that the freedom of thought and conscience and religion is established, and which includes choosing one's preferred religion and to change religion if one would like to do so. It also says that the states that are signatories to that pact, they respect the rights of parents to choose the religious and moral education of the children according to their own convictions. And there's also a resolution which was submitted to the General Assembly of the United Nations and which strengthens this type of religious freedom. In Peru, we have the patronage, which came about around 1980, and Peru signed a concordat with the Vatican, which establishes certain agreements between Peru and the Vatican, and that is still current. And from an international, according to the national legal framework, we have the Constitution of 1993, which I already explained in the beginning, which recognizes freedom of religion and the freedom not to be discriminated or persecuted based on one's beliefs, as long as it is not a detriment to a public order and public morals. There are also other legal frameworks that seek certain benefits to religious entities, such as the Act 774, the Revenue Act, and also the Customs Act, and that has to do with the donations that come from abroad. With regard to taxes, these religious entities will be exempt from taxes. The same also applies to the Municipal Tax Act. There's the Property Tax Act, which has to do with real estate and has to do with transferring property rights, as well as the automobile tax. And when it comes to religious property, they are exempt from that as long as it has to do with temples, churches, monasteries, convents, and museums. In the case of the religious entities that acquire a piece of property for those purposes will be exempt from the tax as well, and the same applies to vehicles that belong to religious entities. In the case of the Customs Act, which has to do with donations, the same applies to the Act to facilitate merchandise that comes from abroad for goods that are imported by a specific church for its own purposes. And so in 2010, within the whole historical development in Peru, was when Act 29365, the Freedom of Religion Act, was promulgated, which basically develops further what is in the Constitution, that the state guarantees the fundamental right of all people to have freedom of religion, recognizing this is recognized by the Peruvian Constitution and by international treaties. It ratifies that the public exercise of religion is free, and the only limit is the protection of the rights of others in the exercise of their fundamental rights. Although this was already allowed in Peru and also recognized at a constitutional level, the rights of all religious entities and all people in general to select their own religion or practice a religion in public or as a group. In 2010, this law was passed to reinforce what had already been happening in a de facto manner. and which was already set forth in treaties and in the constitutions. And like I mentioned, there's also the equality of treatment, and any action or omission that discriminates against anyone for their religious beliefs is also prohibited. And this is the definition of religious entity in Peru, which is that churches and religious communities that consist of natural persons who profess, practice, teach, and disseminate a specific faith. And they have their own beliefs, a moral doctrine, etc. Now, the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights has a fundamental role in the strengthening of coordination with the religious entities. Within the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights, with the joinder of these two ministries, within the Ministry of Justice, there is a administration which is called Justice and Religious Organizations, and then there are two subcategories. One has to do with the Catholic Church because of the concordant, and then there's also another administration which is interreligious. And basically what this administration does is to strengthen religious freedom, and it establishes a collaborative relationship which is a little bit more based on daily tasks in terms of the relationship between religious organizations and the state. For example, this interreligious administration also is involved with immigration because of some of the benefits that religious entities receive. And so there is a problem with people who come from outside the country, and they receive a tourist visa, such as for missionaries, and others receive tourist visas. So what the ministry does through this administration is to help them obtain a separate immigration status so that they can be in the country for a more extended period, and so that they can receive the immigration papers that they need. In the last 4 years, there have been more than 27,000 approved immigration statuses in cooperation with these religious entities. And they also provide information for all the religious entities that enter the country. And yesterday we talked about the Registry of Religious Entities, which began in 2003, began to work a little bit more starting in 2004. There were about 158 registered religious organizations, 143 religious organizations, 14 missionary religious entities. And so it is basically divided into a main section where the religious organizations themselves are, and then a special one where the missionary entities are categorized. And here we can see how this is broken down, these different religions that are registered. Most of them are evangelical Christians, given that they have a structure that is hierarchical, they don't have a structured or hierarchical structure, but each of them has their own structure. Now, what is the role, or why are the religious organizations important, and what is their role in our country, and why is it also important to continue to strengthen the topic of religious freedom? First of all, religion, well, it is easier to govern a country that has a specific set of guidelines, and that allows each person to develop as best he or she can. And then secondly, This principle, which is common among almost all religions, is supporting one's fellow man. And for this purpose, the state establishes benefits, like I mentioned in the beginning, to strengthen this training and social service training that come into the country. And examples of that is the Swiss mission in Peru, located in Pulcapa, one of the provinces located in the Amazon jungle in Peru. They have been there in Peru for almost 48 years. They have been increasing literacy. The jungle is a multicultural area. They have microcultures, many different languages. And so it is exactly these religious organizations and missionaries that go to these areas to provide assistance to the people who live there. And in this case, this particular mission, what it does is that it helps people improve their technical skills in certain areas where they can. Then there's also the South American mission, or the SAM mission, which is a Christian community where they have. They provide transportation for people to be able to see. In many parts of the jungle, in the Amazon jungle, there are many areas where there's no commercial airline, where there are no commercial airline service, and so they have small planes that cover that part of the country, and they work together to provide transportation. They have Bible groups and literacy centers. Then there's also the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or ASPERSUD, the official name in Peru, and they provide donation. They donate wheelchairs and blood and other things. And so in Peru, the topic of religious freedom has developed progressively over an extended period of time. This year is the 100th anniversary since the prohibition against publicly professing other religions than the Catholic religion was abolished. And I believe it's in November when the anniversary takes place. And this strengthening which has taken place, and the strengthening that we see today, allows for religious groups to work together with the state and vice versa for the purpose of increasing social inclusion in the country, which is one of the policies of the current administration in our country. And this allows the general population or the community to develop further. I think I'm still within the allotted time, but so basically, those were the two main ideas that I wanted to give you, that in Peru, all the laws can be perfected. There's always room for perfection as long as we can improve things, like I just explained, as long as we develop progressively and not regressively. And that is so we're going in the right direction in order for the religious groups to fulfill their purposes. Thank you very much.